Hey everyone, so today's video is a bit different because I wanted to show me making some 3D models. One reason it's a bonus video. By the way, these models are available for free on Thingiverse and are linked in the description. So I used screenshots because I didn't think I could get a non-flashy time-lapse, but for all the models in this video I started off with a cylinder. I then smoothed it out and smushed it into the shape and painted on some guidelines. For the first model, I'm reimagining the cursed owl LPS that I hate, so I'm starting off with their beak after, forming the base of the head. I used a sphere and dragged it into place to form the beak. I made the lower half smaller to form the mouth. I then sketched out the eye shape and used the mask tool to protect the face. I used to just use the clay tool to form the eyes, then I'd use the crease tool to define them. However, now I indent the eyes and add in some spheres and push them into shape. It looks a lot better that way. It's also a lot quicker. I then lined where I wanted some feathers on the face. I then masked around them too, while I built up the feathers with the clay tool. I then added some cheek fluff because it's cute. I used a stretched out cube to flatten the bottom of the head because most LPS heads are flat at the bottom and it just looks nicer. I then made those little feather ears that aren't really ears using more spheres. They looked like pigtails before I smoothed them out and it was actually really cute. Someone really should make an owl character with pigtails. I actually made a model of the original cursed owl and I've been using them as a reference for the proportions. To make the legs and feet, I used more spheres, and I used the crease tool to make the toes separate. I then used yet another sphere to make the body by stretching it out and into shape. I then added some chest fluff and flattened the bottom and the neck. I then started the wings with yet another sphere that I flattened out and stretched into shape, and I used more spheres to form more wing details. I also used more squished spheres to make the tail. Later on, I remade the beak inspired by a BJD doll remix someone did of this model because it was so much better than what I originally did. I'm now making models of the opossum and possum redesigns I did. Starting off with the opossum, I used another cylinder. I then stretched out the muzzle, which it was really difficult to get it to look okay. I then sketched out the mouth placement and messed around until it finally looked okay. Then drawing guidelines jump scare, and now I'm working on the eyes. As you can see, I used the new method I found with the spheres and it looks so much better. I then made their cheeks bigger since they're super happy. I then added some much needed fluff. Then using more spheres I made the ears, and unfortunately there's came out too bear-like, I think, but I don't have the energy to go back and fix that. Now for the body this time I'm using tubes and a sphere for the butt, and yet more spheres to form the legs and feet. Oddly, I used tubes for the toes, but I probably would have been fine with more spheres. I then realized I made the body too long and had to split it in half and squish it together. I then added a little chest fluff. For the tail, I used another tube, and after posing, I thickened some of the radius in certain spots. I just learned I could do this recently, and it's been so helpful. I then masked some of the lines for the tail to make dents, but I wish I did it differently because it looks so bad. But anyways, I used a cylinder to make their neck bigger, and I realized I didn't like how straight they stood, so I cut them up and positioned them into a more curved stance. I used a tube to rejoin them together and then smoothed it out, and there's the little goober. For the Australian possum, I used another cylinder. LPS heads I found are normally cylinders, however sometimes I've gotten away with using spheres. There's also a lot of spheres and tubes. Most 3D models of living things are, I think. In general with art, finding the shapes helps a lot, but sculpting and modeling, in my experience, really depend on you knowing what shapes to use. By the way, I used spheres to form the top of the muzzle and a third to form the bottom. I smooth them out and use a crease tool to make the mouth stand out better. I use another sphere I squish into place for the nose. I also used spheres for the cheek fluff, and I squished it into shape and smoothed them into the face. The ears are once again spheres, and I carved them out and dragged them into place. For the body, I used another tube and I drew guidelines on it for the arms and legs. I then made the feet using spheres, and I made the legs the same way as the others and attached the feet. I then did the same for the arms. Usually the limbs are always tubes. I'm not sure how all three in this video used spheres. I used a tube for the tail, though, and added spheres to make the fluff and flattened everything out. I really like the models I've made, and I hope to see people use them. I've been really enjoying seeing people use my models. However, if you're selling customs that use them, especially if they're my original ones, please credit me. Some haven't, and it sucks to see. Also, I want to make it clear, as long as you credit me, I don't care if you sell customs with my models, as long as you're not selling the files that are literally free. I'm happy. Anyways, I'll post some other Monday.